Inner Sanctum Mysteries.
Good evening, friends of the creaking door. This is your host to welcome you again into the Inner Sanctum.
By punching a hole in this speaker cloth support, and when I had it up in the back of the radio and I marked this loop area, I went ahead and also marked where the screw holes were. And I'm going to go ahead and try this paper punch. It's a heavy duty paper punch. I bought it quite a while ago, and the theory is if I squeeze hard enough it'll punch a nice clean hole. Let's see if it works. Alright, there she is. Real nice. Looks good. Looks good. Now I'll punch the other three. Well, you know what they say about the best laid plans. You know, the other two holes are punched nice and neatly. However, these holes where I have it marked right there are too far up for the punch to reach. It won't quite make it all the way. The speaker cloth will be glued to this side of the mat, and the surface was a little too shiny. I'll be using some Elmer's glue, standard old wood glue. I'll be smearing it along the edge, and I wanted something a little coarser for the glue to grab a hold of for when I lay the cloth down. Now we're going to start by laying the cloth by finding out the exact center point here. And we're going to start laying it here, clamp it down, and let it dry. Start with one edge. Don't try to lay the whole thing at once. Not a good idea. I've tried it. Doesn't work for me. It may work fine for you, but it has never worked for me. Laying a speaker cloth on properly, especially one that has lines on it and they have to be straight or at a certain angle, one side at a time. Take your time and you'll come up with a really nice product. You know, nothing worse than having a nice looking radio cabinet and then putting a speaker cloth up there that's crooked. After you, of course, have roughed up the outside of your speaker board backing, your speaker cloth backing, you'll need some plastic, which I get at Hobby Lobby over in the quilting department. It comes in a fairly large sheet. You can, I don't know what it is, something to do with patterns or something. Anyway, I cut it up, down to the sizes I need. You'll need a piece of that. You'll need a piece of board. And that'll at least cover the width of the backing. And you're going to need a few of these clothespins, or these little clips here that I bought a bag. I found them one time in a store and bought it. I think I bought 2 bags of those. And make sure you have enough of these clips and clothespins to do the job. You'll need a pair of scissors to cut your speaker cloth. Good sharp scissors, please. And of course you're going to need your speaker cloth. And last but not least, I like to use Elmer's wood glue for it, believe it or not. The center of the backing, you put it in the position in which it'll be mounted in the radio. The center of the backing has been marked right there. And when you're dealing with a speaker cloth that has lines, where it has to be straight, the lines have to be straight in order to look right, or they have to be at a given angle in order to look right. These lines that you place on this mat or on the cardboard backing or whatever it is you use, these become very important. And I'm fixing to line up the cloth I'll be using, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. The speaker cloth required for the Philco 620, 630B, 630s, 650s, and a whole bunch of other 600 series radios used what was called the chevron pattern. These sergeants that wear these stripes and everything on their sleeves, those are called chevrons, and these look like sergeant chevron stripes. And right here is the center of that chevron pattern. That has to be right in the middle of the backing that holds it. That's why my line is there, and when I move this entire cloth forward, or upward I guess I should say, to be placed on the glue, which I will put first along the top, I want to make sure I keep it lined up with that line until finally it's over the edge. Then I'll go ahead and clamp it down and hold it, and then we'll let it dry. I won't be putting a whole ton of glue across here. It's just going to be basically a smear and then a spread out with my finger. It does not take a ton of glue to fasten these speaker cloths to the backing. I've seen some people cover the whole backing with glue. Not necessary. Not necessary at all. Just kind of use your finger to smear it out. This is wood glue. This stuff works great. Some people use hot glue. Nah. You know, I've tried all that, believe me. This is the best way to do it that I've found. Unless something comes better, or comes along that's better, I will continue to use this stuff for this. You know, it doesn't have to be Elmer's wood glue. You know, they've got that Gorilla Glue and all that other stuff. It's basically all the same thing. Already, this glue is beginning to get sticky, which is what I want. Alright, step one complete. The cloth has been moved up, and I'll now take this plastic and Scotch tape it to this board. With the plastic side down, it will be placed over the top of the edge, and then these things will hold it all together. I have allowed this thing to dry overnight. We're going to go ahead and take these clips out, or take the clips off, I guess. And there it is, secured to the top end of the support board. The next thing we're going to do is bring the glue down about, oh, maybe 2/3 of the way on each side, get it stretched out nice and flat, and put new boards along each edge with you know, reattached with these clips. That's our next step, same way I did the top. Before bringing it down and gluing it in place, I had to make those last two holes, and the only thing I could come up with, which was, you know, a stroke of brilliance. I mean, you're going to be totally fascinated on how I did that. I took a pocket knife, I punched a hole in, reamed it around a little bit, trimmed off some of the edging that stuck up with my diagonal cutters, and then took a pencil, stuck it down in, and just kind of reamed it around a few times, you know, until I got a nice round hole. Now, brilliant, brilliant! And the glue has been smeared on both sides, and we'll now pull the cloth down nice and snug on that. It's gotten a little tacky too, which is the way I like it. Let me go ahead and stretch it down, and then we'll go ahead and place these boards on with the clips, and once again I've attached a plastic to one side. The purpose of the plastic is to keep the wood from being cemented to the cloth. In order to make things a little easier, I went ahead and trimmed off the bottom half of the cloth here, somewhat down to size, so I didn't have to wrestle with all this mess. And we'll see what happens after this dries. It's pretty straight. My old crooked eye sort of thinks it's pretty good. It is now the next day, and we are simply going to do a repeat of what we did up until now. And we're going to do it with the bottom half of the speaker cloth. And once again, the glue has been applied. Remember now, not too thick. You don't want it to be really thick. Just a thin smear is really all you need. And then we'll bring this down, and we'll go ahead and stretch it out and re-clamp it again. This will be the final clamping. Alright, now we just go ahead and wait for it to dry. And that is the way I put a speaker cloth cover on a speaker backing. Now, of course, you know, there's folks out there probably saying, my God, I could have had that done in 3 hours. Yeah, that's right. You probably could. You could have maybe had it done in 30 minutes. But I repeat, I said that's the way I do it. You know, you, as always, are expected to do better. Now, once all these clamps and everything's, all this stuff is removed, you got to kind of go along the edge here and kind of lift the cloth up a little bit and make sure that it's glued down. There may be like a half-inch spot or a quarter-inch spot here where the glue didn't take very well. That's okay. You just slide a little glue in underneath it and re-clamp it. This particular cloth frays very, very easily, and if you're not careful, the entire thing will disappear. So after you get it glued and you trim your edge down fairly close, everything's glued into place, take yourself a cigarette lighter and just singe along the edge very lightly. Doesn't have to do much. Just a little bit of singe like that, and it'll melt the edge and keep it from fraying. Pretty simple, really. Just got to be careful you don't set the whole board on fire, that's all. See if I can do this one without setting it on fire. Probably will. Just got to kind of blow it, keep on top of it, just kind of melt it down. Now, not all speaker cloths require this. This one does. Because, boy, it just frays very easy. You want to melt that edge. And I'll do that all the way around. We're getting down to the fine little details now. I need to put one more coat of clear satin lacquer on the radio, but before I do, I need to cut out one of these Philco decals and get it on the front. I bought these a while back. I think it was from Radio Days. There was like 6 or 7 on one piece of paper. I've used a number of them already on several Philco radios. Applying the decal is a pretty straightforward affair. You have to cut your decal out and try to make it as straight as possible, top and bottom. Then get yourself a little bowl with just a little tiny bit of water in there. And a pair of scissors, of course, and what's left over on the rest of the decals, because sometimes you make a boo-boo. And I've had to go through, when I first started doing these things, I probably went through 4 decals before I got it on there right. And I said, that's never going to happen again. I'm going to make sure I do it right. And you watch, I'll probably still muff it up here. Okay, first thing we're going to do is dip my finger in and get it nice and wet. Determine where it's supposed to be. And in this case, this decal, regardless of what the decal is, I mean Firestone decals or Zenith or whatever, go ahead and put yourself a bunch of water up there. This decal, by the way, goes right there in the center, between the L and the I. I'm lucky enough to have exactly 6 letters, so it'll go the center of that black line right there will go right between the L and the I. Just perfect. Piece of cake. And then, of course, left and right, or I mean up and down, you want to kind of get it, between the top of the black line and the bottom of this lip. But you just do your best, as always. Now, as soon as I drop this in the water, this paper is just going to immediately curl. It's going to curl up into a circle almost. And it doesn't take long before that decal is ready to come off that paper. I'm talking just a few seconds. And then I'm going to have to transfer it up to here and slide the gold letters off the paper. And a lot of that's going to help me will be the Q-tip I have here. A little bit of my finger, a little bit of Q-tip, and a lot of patience. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to show you everything because I can't do this with just one hand. But I'll show you some of the basics. And we've already got our water up here. Get it nice and wet. Don't forget to put it up here. Incidentally, lacquer finish will not peel up these decals if someone was wondering about that. You stick it down in there. See how it curled up? See how she curls up? Got to be very careful. She curls almost immediately. It does not take long before that decal is ready to come off. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and slide it off. Well, that's about as straight, horizontal, and in the center as my old calibrated eyeball can get it. The trick that once you get the decal on the radio, don't overly play with it. Smooth it out with your thumb and finger, left and right. The wetness on the radio will enable you to jostle it around a little bit, slide it left, slide it right, up, down a little bit. And sometimes you overwork it, and the next thing you know, it goes together and you got a bunch of crinkles in the middle that will not come out. And you got to peel it off, start all over again with a new one. Take your time, be patient, don't overly work it. Those of you who worked on old model airplanes years ago where we had wet decals, this should actually be a piece of cake for you. The younger generation might find it a little bit more difficult. The last step in this speaker cloth procedure is to make the holes where the screws go through. And that's why I have this old soldering iron tip I keep around in my workbench drawer. I'll be putting that in the soldering iron, and we're just going, and I've already marked where the holes are. We're just going to burn a hole right down through there. Just melt it right down through. Alright, the old soldering iron nice and hot now. And if I do this right, it'll look good. If I do it wrong, it'll look bad. So here goes. I'm just going to put it on there straight up and down and just sort of let it melt its way through. And it looks pretty good. Let's see if I can get half as good at the other holes. Okay, all 4 holes are done. Incidentally, before you shut off the heat on that old tip that you used to burn the hole, clean it up real good, because you're going to need it again at some point in the future. You get too much of these old speaker cloth gook crap burned on there, and you won't even be able to use the tip for that unless you got a million extra ones.
Good night. Pleasant dreams.